Open the meeting up at 7:10. We do
I
not,
apologize for that.
we do not, no problem. We do not have minutes yet for the March 13th meeting. So we'll skip to the next item, which just is a review of the 2025 draft budget. So that's been given to everybody. It was inside the Dropbox folder. And Ashley has given us all a copy here at the meeting. So I'm going to turn it over to Andrew and Ashley and give us an overview of the final. Should I call this the final draft? There's not going to be too many changes left to this, right?
Whatever you guys make changes to tonight will be the final, but this
Gotcha.
is our, like, going forward draft.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
okay.
It's all balanced.
So I will, for lexicon, I will call it the final draft
Yeah.
budget for 2025.
All right, so, standing up so I can see. All right, so we put together basically this slide deck so we kind of go through where we've seen trend for the current fiscal year, our revenue projections for next year, and then expenditures for what we're proposing for consideration for next year. And based off of the feedback we get tonight, we'll update this for presentation on Tuesday.
Mhm.
All right. So some quick highlights of the budget. We look to basically meet the goal of proposing necessary and impactful budget increases, address staffing shortages to improve and review turnover of permit applications, plan for strategic technology investments to ensure continuity of government through cyber technology measures and improvements to the town's digital platform, addresses operational deficiencies in public safety and staffing levels, meets the minimum net school spending requirements of the regional school districts, and keep moving forward toward implementing long-term capital investments. And then it's just some of the challenges that we had as we were developing this budget was, trying to manage the new growth from the construction projects that are going on right now to try to be conservative with our projections to maximize the long-term benefit. Anticipating a debt exclusion vote for the construction of the fire station with a full debt exclusion that would impact FY27. At 11% proposed increase to the school assessment, which has continued their trend of at least 8% per year over the last 5 years. Addressing the current labor market, attrition, competitive wages, our need to address facilities maintenance and management, and the continually large increases in retirement insurance costs. So just a quick review of the first half. So we basically pulled data through December 31st to compare how we were 6 months into the budget and how we were performing as compared to the prior year and where we had anticipated.
The same 6 months.
Yeah.
For the same 6 month period.
Gotcha, yeah.
So tax levy, we were 6% above where we were the prior year. That's all basically tied to tax billing. Excise tax, we were 10% low. However, this is prior to our actual commitment that this went out. So we do the one commitment in March.
It's
and then,
end of January,
Sorry,
usually beginning of February.
What is a
Like,
commitment?
your motor vehicle excise
Right.
commitment. So that comes over from the state, from the Department of Motor Vehicles, comes over to us to commit for payment. It was,
Yeah.
I believe it was billed around February 5th, and it was due, I think, around March 5th. So it was your first big motor vehicle,
Yep.
and that's usually the massive chunk of our motor vehicle excise that comes in.
So this basically shows like if somebody purchased a new vehicle, they got a new excise tax
yeah.
bill, or they were delinquent from the year before and decided to pay.
Yeah.
They paid in that 6 month period, and
Mhm.
that's what we realized.
Yep.
State receipts, we're trending 3% higher than the previous year. Basically, that's just whatever the state formula is. The local receipts were 40% higher than what they were the prior year. So some of the breakdown of our local receipts, as you touched on, motor vehicle excise, the commitment hadn't gone up yet. Meals tax, for a total estimated budget, when we used our when we did local receipts, we estimated 180,000. As of December December 30th, we had collected 145,000.
Okay.
Cannabis tax, we estimated at 120,000. As of that date, we had already collected 122,000. Investment income, I think this was something that was brought up last year as if we could have been doing better.
Just a quick question on the cannabis tax,
Yep.
okay? Are we impacted at all by this rule that says, we can't collect money from cannabis?
We can't collect on
The
community
additional.
impact payments at a blanket 3% rate.
That's an additional, so we get the 3% in sales, like a sales tax. We get
Yeah.
an automatic 3% in sales tax from cannabis. That's what they call the cannabis tax.
Yeah.
And then in most of the community host agreements, there was an additional 3%
Right,
impact
impact fee.
fee of whatever their gross sales were for the year. That's what the Cannabis Commission came down and said, you can't collect that unless you can prove to us that you've been impacted.
Right.
That's
And we have
irrelevant here.
Right,
Yeah.
so when our local businesses were coming on board, this legislation was in the works and was kind of known, so there wasn't a big push from either side to collect on that 3%.
Gotcha, okay.
Because a lot of towns were kind of in that position where some were being very aggressive and trying to collect it before the state changed the laws.
Yeah.
Other towns were even, some towns were even returning the money back to the
Yeah.
cannabis businesses, saying that we didn't need it. We kind of took the neutral approach of saying, let's see how this plays out.
Yep.
And that turned out to be a benefit because they said you can't collect that unless you can prove, so.
Right,
And we can go back every year and
Yeah.
submit, there's a certain time frame of a window we can go back and submit. So if we ever were impacted,
Yeah.
we could go back and submit for up to the 3%.
It's
right
how-
now, we're not gonna be looking to pay anybody else.
No,
Nope.
no, we're not like the town of Uxbridge that
Right,
took
it's-
that more aggressive approach and then were sued by the cannabis businesses
Yep.
and then are
Gotcha.
required to pay that money
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, okay.
Investment income, this is a banner year for investment income. We went from projecting at $30,000 to already collecting halfway through the year, $133,000.
Yeah, Virginia and I have been really working hard at trying to get some aggressive,
Yeah,
percentage rates, because the percentages were pretty high in the beginning of the year, so investing all it was pretty much all the ARPA money we've invested.
yeah,
Collector penalties and interest, really, this is just money that's collected for people who didn't pay their taxes on time.
Yeah.
Can't really project that out too much. But building inspection fees, really, the name of the story on here is Amazon. You know, they submit, that's probably just an ancillary permit that they had to pay for their construction, I think it might have been half.
I think that was
Half the
for
building
the installing of the, conveyance systems.
Yeah, so this was the conveyance system permit hit, 700, not the full 700,000, it was probably $400,000 of that, but we're well beyond benchmark
Yeah.
as far as that goes. So projecting into FY '25, we showed how we developed into FY '24 and then into FY '25. So here you can see the tax levy limit of 29,000 that gets bumped into the next year. You can see our new growth last year was $2.5 million. The prior year was just a little over half. Going into next year, we're being we're remaining conservative, and going at 800,000. Last year we started at 1.5. We're going to be even more conservative this year, even though that we know that Amazon is still progressing. Our debt exclusion, the only one on here is the highway garage, and two in the.
There's two,
I'm
the
sorry, the
fields from Dudley Charlton and Bay Path's addition building.
Right, so those are those three projects that are included in there, depreciating over time. State receipts, this is based off the governor's budget, 4.5%. Local receipts, trying to stay consistent, 3.5% over what was projected. So even though we are ahead, we're still gonna remain conservative, because we know once the building permit fees stop up there, we're back to where we were.
Right,
Receipts reserved for appropriation, so your ambulance receipts, your cemetery receipts,
Yeah.
Those remain consistent annually. And then cherry sheet charges factored in at the bottom. So right now we're projecting a revenue increase of 3.12% over what we collected prior year.
yep,
And then we just pulled out to what the projected funding was by source, so you can see 4% of our budget is based off tax levy.
Mm-hmm. Any questions, Chairman?
Nope.
So here we want to kind of show who shares that burden of the tax base.
Yeah.
So you can see in FY '22, the residential portion shared 78% of the residential tax base.
Yeah.
Now, with the commercial development that's gone on now, when we're in '24, that's dropped by 4%. We're at 74%, where the industrial base has gone from 7% to 10%.
Yeah.
And personal property also has jumped from 9.6 to 11. And then revenue projection, we took this from our forecasting model. So this kind of shows where we were. This is projected future out, so you can see by FY '30, trending on the path that we are with, you know, nothing unforeseen
Yeah.
or over projected growth, that we'd be close to $50 million budget by FY '30.
Mm-hmm.
Local receipts, this is just a comparison of how we've performed in our estimates over the last, since FY '18. So every year we've under-projected our receipts, but we do want to keep an eye on this trend where FY '23, you know, we still projected under, but you can see that there was a drop in that local receipt growth.
Yeah.
A big part of that, I should say, is FY '18, '19, '20, I think 21?
I don't think 21, I think
Okay.
21 is when it fell off.
Yeah, so FY '20, that was when Millennium was was in the agreement with the town.
Yeah, that pilot agreement.
So it was a pilot agreement that was approved through state legislative act. Rather than rather than that being factored into our tax base, it came in as a local receipt. The next year, we had to account for that coming out as a local receipt and going into the tax base.
Okay.
So you'll see that the tax base, the new growth that year jumped considerably, just because of that methodology shift.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we also think that was the same time frame we had bigger projects coming in, so you saw a little bit of that shift
Yeah.
there too, but it was a bigger jump.
So it's much a classification issue
Right.
as it
Correct.
is a.
Yeah,
So FY, even though you had that drop, Amazon filled the gap in '22 and
Yeah.
'23.
yeah.
And then our trend in revenue, so this has been our new growth over time.
Mm-hmm.
The orange line being our residential growth and the yellow being our commercial industrial property.
Mm-hmm.
So they've gone back and forth year after year, but always hovering around this $300,000 line, and that was kind of a number that was used by the town for new growth projection
Mhm.
for years. We hit this FY '20 mark, again, Millennium drops off, we jumped up over $2 million. We also had a revaluation of the MCI property, was it Northside Road?
So I think something
Yeah.
like that.
Um,
That was done by the state.
that was done by the state. That threw another $1 million of new growth on top of that methodology
Right,
change.
same year.
That's why we had this jump. Then we came back down to earth a little bit the next year. But, you know, still trending much higher. We still projected.
Right.
We still projected low. And then you see in FY '24, that first year that we saw 35% of Amazon hit,
Yeah.
we're well over
Yeah.
we're well over $2 million in new
Yeah.
growth. And then excess levy capacity, next to that, 2010, we had no more than $50,000 in excess levy capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, money that we were licensed to tax that we did not take advantage of.
Yeah.
We taxed everybody to the exact penny that we possibly could.
Yeah.
Until this last year, we gave back $750,000 to the taxpayers. So just some highlights of the expenditures that we're proposing.
Yeah.
So one thing we did was we engaged a comp and class plan based off of a grant that we received from the state to essentially make sure that everybody that is within our comp and class plan is at least within the 60th percentile of the Central Mass competitive market. they basically identified that there were only 4 positions that didn't meet that 60th percentile. So,
Those are the ones that in the budget I'll see
Yes.
8%,
Mhm.
7%.
right.
Well, yeah, you'd see
And you
probably
made
higher.
notations.
Right.
Yeah, the ones that are probably a little higher than the 8%, but
What,
yeah.
what we're essentially proposing is to regrade those positions to a higher grade, to match what is competitive within the town. So, you'll see what that was done. Specifically, it was the IT director
IT.
position, conservation agent, the board of health assistant, and
The council on aging
and the
director.
council and the council on aging director
Yeah.
were underclassified.
Yeah.
Beyond that, it's essentially keeping our same wage scale with a 3% cost of living adjustment. And some of those increases too, there are people that are getting that are due for level adjustments every 3 years in accordance with the pay plan.
Do for level adjustments, why,
Right,
because
so-
of their
so-
longevity?
So our pay plan basically says that every 3 years you get you advance a level on your grade. So it maxes out at 25 years. So if you're here for 25 years, you'll be making the maximum amount of your
Pay grade.
amount.
Yeah.
Our policy is basically that when we bring in a new hire, if they have experience elsewhere, if they have education that exceeds the minimum standard, we can play within that between 1 and 5 range to determine a salary.
Yeah.
But once you're locked into that, you're on the pay plan
And then
and
you
you
keep
progress.
progressing until
Yeah.
you hit your 25 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So that's where it's very incumbent on the HR person to qualify, yeah, you're a 1 or you're a 5.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Right.
between Andrew, myself, and the HR director, the 3 of us,
Right.
we'll usually get together and we'll go over and we'll look at somebody's,
History.
yeah, their history when they're applying, and then we grade them accordingly.
Okay.
Right, so like if they're if they're a lower person that worked here for a while, and they're advancing to a department head role, we may give partial years of credit, so that way they don't say they were here for 25 years and they're just becoming a department head, so they're
Right.
gonna be maxed out as a department head.
Right.
They would start lower on that scale due to, well, you had years of service with the town and exposure to the position, but this is really a new position, so you're
Right.
coming back a little bit.
Okay.
And then it gives them a little bit of room to grow, so they're not just maxed out on that scale too, so it's a benefit for them as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
The DCRSD budget adjustment reflects an 11.5% increase from the assessment of FY '24. A big driving factor of this is the net school spending formula and the minimum state aid contribution, and also the fact that we have the first year of debt on the middle school roof project.
Mhm.
There's a proposal in here to add 2 additional firefighter positions. So remember, last year we added 2 positions, it was requested for 4. This would bring all shifts up to 6 members per shift. So right now they're running 2, with a full complement, they're running 2 shifts at 6 and 2 shifts at 5.
Yeah.
There's a proposal in here to restructure the cemetery division to become a division of facilities and cemeteries. This includes a wage adjustment for the current cemetery superintendent to bring him more into a director role, and also create a laborer position underneath his jurisdiction that will help more with mowing of the fields, digging of the graves, and maintenance of the cemeteries during the summer, and then snowplow operations in the winter, allowing him to focus on facilities maintenance and capital planning.
All right.
Cause
So
right now,
is this
he's
going
doing all
down-
that laboring.
Is this going down the road where we had talked about having a facilities
Mm-hmm.
manager that
Right. Versus,
inventories
right.
all the buildings?
So rather than creating a standalone position that says, you are a facilities director, you're brand new, we don't know where we're gonna put you, we're essentially taking staff that has been here for quite a while, knows a lot about the town and its operations, and say, to use his words, his chief, I can't even say it.
We've been talking too much
Yeah.
today.
He does everything for cemetery,
Yeah.
between managing it and the on-the-ground operations.
Yeah.
All right.
So what we would like to do is have him focus on that management aspect more and provide him the assistance that will do the on-the-ground.
hence the 11%. I think he was the big one.
He was one of the higher ones,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that was all contingent upon a two-level adjustment for advancing advancing to a new position.
Yeah,
And then an additional body in that line of the person who's gonna go out and do the mowing and
Yep.
the ground stuff.
As a backfill for him, cause he's currently doing that.
and where will he be stationed?
So he's
He's
downstairs right
downstairs.
now, yeah, he has an office down there.
Right.
Okay.
So that would just stay within town hall, we wouldn't have to create any more space for a new
Yep.
office.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, we added in a proposal here that was requested by the building inspector's office to add, a part-time assistant in there to, assist with, permit applications. The department did ask for a full-time person, but, we felt it may be more beneficial, or it may be a good splitting
Start,
of,
yeah.
of duties if we said, what can we use to fill the gaps?
Right.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I was a little surprised when I saw that it was $15,000 for that position. I'm thinking to myself, what's that, 4 hours a week, or?
Well, right now, we have like a department admin and 2 other offices, and it's about that, they work, I think, like 15 hours a week.
Right.
No, I'm sure you came up with the right
Yeah.
number, it just
It's at the department assistant.
Yeah,
appeared to me that,
Yeah, it's,
Not a
it's
whole
the
lot.
it's a base level, base
Gotcha.
level assistant.
it's like
So-
an entry level,
Yeah, so your only primary job functions would be that permit processing
yeah,
and issue.
clerical.
yeah,
But-
answering the phones.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I won't go through all the detail on here, but this is basically a, overview of each of the line
General,
items
yeah.
under general government.
Mhm.
Overall, total general government expenditure increase would be a 2.8% increase, including all
Mhm.
cost of living adjustments and requested,
Mhm.
expenditures. So, I guess on that, since we're on this,
Mhm.
you wanna talk about the general government portion.
So I noticed if you get a certification,
Mhm.
you get a considerable bump.
I was hoping to,
So she's due for a step increase this year.
right, anyway.
So that's factored into the
Right.
budget
Well, so
number.
I would go,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go up a step, whether I'm certified or not, cause I've been in the position for going on 4 years.
Yeah.
So I'm due for a step increase anyway, and then
Yeah.
if I were to get certified for going to school and taking the exam for the past couple
Is
years.
that something you're actively doing?
Yeah, I
She's-
just took the exam in March, so I'll find out at the beginning of May if I passed.
Actually, good luck.
Right, so if she
Fingers
doesn't,
crossed.
if she doesn't pass, that
go
number,
back
that
down.
number will go back
We'll be
down,
down a
but
little
Yeah.
bit.
if,
Okay.
if she does get certified, then it would give her that one wage adjustment, which we've done for other employees who have gotten
They're certified.
certificates for professional development that are at
That's a
a
very hard
accredited
exam.
level.
And I don't know if there's any
No.
other,
No, there wasn't anything in that group that I highlighted. Of course, I don't have my glasses, so I can't.
yeah, I don't think anything else. The only difference that we really did do, besides, you'll see the couple ones that Andrew pointed out up here, like the conservation agent.
Mhm.
We fixed her from the common class study, but the only other big difference, and you weren't here last meeting, we just moved the telephone, like town hall telephone bill, just
Mhm.
for like answering the phones, we get like a bill for that, and it was sitting in IT's budget. So
Okay.
I moved it up to, utilities, just to be in line with, that's where our electric bill is, that's where our cable bill is, so just keep it all in line, it's all in the municipal offices line.
No.
So you'll see a shift, one went up, one went down between the two, and then we had to add a little bit extra because our bill did go up. So that was that correction, which we talked about last meeting.
I remember you talked about the telephones.
Yeah, and then the only other big change was we increased, gas and diesel, by 20 grand, just because that's been coming in under budget, we've been putting money into that every year, I don't foresee it going down again this year, so we just added a little bit of a cushion, so we don't have to go back to town meeting in the spring
So,
like we
yeah,
are doing
need
now to add money there,
10,000
yeah.
more. All right, and then the planning board was one of those ones that bumped up, and the assistant, that was, again, the step up that you were talking about earlier?
So I
was a
think
6.
she had, so if, when you see the people with the 5%, they usually jumped up a grade plus got their cost of living,
Okay.
yeah, so that 5% is the 3% cost of living, and then it's a 2.5% grade when you go up
Got it.
another level.
So from this point forward, now, when I see something like a 5%,
Yeah,
I'll know that that's,
yeah, they've been here for
Yeah,
the at
step
least the
in
3
grade,
years,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then anyone that's over that was probably someone that was affected by that,
mhm,
wage
Yep.
salary that salary study that we did.
Yep. Okay.
That brings us down to the public safety people.
Alright, so public safety is next. Doing big police salaries right now, we have not began negotiations yet. Their contract is due to expire at the end of the fiscal year. We have an allowance in the HR budget for a settlement at some point, but right now we're essentially carrying the operations level of the current fiscal year.
Mhm.
Why adjusting the individuals that are in that department
But-
that are of,
That are
the
due,
non-union people.
yeah.
Right, but you will, so you're carrying the same budget from last year, putting the anticipated increase into HR's contingency
Yeah.
type?
Right,
Yeah.
a number in there, so that way, once the contract is settled, it can be transferred.
And that
into-
includes both wages and benefits and all the other
Correct.
things that are
Yeah.
associated with, okay.
Yep.
Okay,
We just try to put something of our placeholder in there so that they're not SOL come,
right.
say like July when they settle their contract, yeah.
Yep.
But also not
Which
trying
is,
to
which
show
is
our
funny you
hand.
say that, because this is the first year, and I'm probably gonna eat these words. This is the first year I don't remember anybody coming to us and saying, hey, I need an extra $30,000. We haven't made a transfer this year.
No, I'm the only person, I haven't had anyone ask, so. The only person, you,
Mine only.
cause you know that fire, but I think he'll be able to, I think he'll be able to
Mm.
adjust it within his budget, cause he's got some openings.
And
in
anybody
wages.
listening, that's not an open invitation to hit us for, but I'm just,
Don't come.
it's the first year, Jeremy, that I cannot remember somebody
Mhm.
coming to us and saying, I'm short.
Yep. And I just wanna highlight too, where our differences were between what was requested of the department head and what we're recommending, so, there was a higher request for overtime, sick time coverage, police equipment, a large request for K-9 expenses, but I believe that we're rectifying that
Mhm.
issue with a
Yeah.
project through Bay Path.
Right, they requested 30.
He was looking for a large project there. I believe he was able to get Bay Path to actually do the work of, it was mainly for the animal control
Yeah.
building, but now that he's able to engage
Okay.
that,
Yeah.
I don't think that
Yeah.
request is
And said,
needed
you know,
anymore.
he asked for 30, you gave him 9, and I'm saying, man, he can't be too thrilled with that one. Okay.
That one was the
We're
only
able to
cut
work
he
that out.
agreed to me on. The other one for the equipment, so the reason that is just a little different, their expense line, we did take out of capital that request for their body cam software, and I added
Mhm.
that to his budget, so his
Mhm.
request was higher, but I was able to drop it a little bit.
Okay.
Fire overtime salaries, if we're adding the additional body, the hope and intent is that reduces the need for overtime,
Mhm.
or at least that is balanced with it between his
Wage
regular
line, yeah.
wages and his overtime if
Mhm.
he has the backfill. I think
Mhm.
that's what we've seen, even though he's had an increase in overtime costs, that's been balanced back out by what he has available
Right.
in his wages. Slight, less of an increase in the training reimbursement cost than what was proposed. And then the building salaries department, where we didn't have this position before, he requested it to be a full-time position, and we're proposing it as a
Part-time.
part-time, non-benefited.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions in that section?
Nope, answered them all.
Jamie, you all set?
Somebody else logged in, I don't know if that's,
Keith, but I don't see
well,
him.
I don't know if Kristen, oh,
I
someone
don't know if
logged
you
in.
can see me, but I thumbs up, I'm good, I have no questions, I promise to ask if I have some.
Thank you, Christian.
Somebody.
No, I'm good here.
Thanks, Keith.
All right, moving on to education. So, kind of at the will of, the school budget process as to how this goes, but it's more than 50% of our budget that we have to account for. This is a breakdown, so Bay Path, annually, they basically come in and say, this is what the minimum state aid is. They are operating, on different grounds than the public school system. So, based off the changes of enrollment, their total assessment only increases 0.1% over last year.
Mm-hmm.
Dudley Charlton Regional School District, though, it's a little bit of a different story.
Yeah.
They are proposing a 10% increase in their operating assessment costs. That increase for the capital assessment is the debt service on the roofs, that Dudley is pursuing a debt exclusion vote on. We've already kind of taken the stance that we weren't going to go that route.
Mhm.
And, they're in a less than 1% increase in transportation costs. Total increase of 11.5%, and then education total of 10%. And I just wanted to show too what the trend in enrollments have been for both.
Mhm.
So, I mean, they've had a waiting list forever. They're maxed out at their numbers, so that number's not going to change very much until they do, unless they did an addition. But the DCRSD numbers have dropped over time. I found.
Go ahead, Terry.
Oh.
Jamie, I'm sorry. You're muted, Jamie. Unmute. Now, go ahead.
I don't know why. Yeah, sorry, I don't know why I was muted. One, Kristen said she's on the call, but she's
Oh.
not listed as a panelist, so she can't ask you questions, although I don't know that she has any. And two, I know the school enrollment numbers have gone down for DCRSD, but that doesn't change the cost to do business. And so I
Yeah.
feel like that sometimes is a factor that gets brought up
Yeah.
with residents in town, and I just wanted to be a clear point that the cost to provide services to the students doesn't alter just because there's not as many students that go to the school unless they have less offerings at like Shepherd Hill or something like that for course selection options. And every year they do adjust that and change that and base it upon enrollment for students. So I know we don't have to spend a ton of time on that, but I did just want to point that out, that I know that the number of students has gone down, but the services that the students need hasn't.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie.
And I think the next slide's almost like a little bit more telling as to why we are where we are. So this is a trend in the DCRSD's budget over time. What has been considered the required net school spending amount, the required net local contribution, those are numbers set by the state, and most importantly, Chapter 70 aid and how that's affected our assessments.
Mhm.
So, the red line at the bottom is what our assessments have done over time. You know, it's been basically this slow burn until 2019 when we passed the override, flattened out a little bit more, but the last few years we've seen a drastic increase in that.
Yeah.
And the school budgets, it has mirrored that. But what hasn't mirrored that is Chapter 7. Since 2008, before 2008, Chapter 70 basically followed that path. The state was contributing that same portion of what the town was kicking in. It was matching that line. It was matching with pretty much all the other projections. As soon as that market crashed, it had been minimum net school spending every single year.
Mhm.
So that is maintained flat. So the state has not been keeping up with their obligation to the towns, especially for minimum aid towns like us that are tied back to that enrollment factor. So in reality, if the state was keeping up their half of the bargain here, we'd be getting well over 30. We'd be getting another $10 million from the state in Chapter 70.
Mhm.
But it's just not keeping up. So.
And also what's driving up our increase there is our new growth. So as our new growth goes up, our Chapter 70 formula flips. So more of the burden falls onto us than to Dudley, because we're growing at a faster rate than they are. So that also is gonna drive our increase to go up as well, which we've seen in the past 3-4 years.
But I think the biggest, at least the caveat to that, if there was any good news, would be transportation reimbursements. So if you go back to 2010, we were about a 56% split.
Mhm.
The state was only funding 56% of transportation. That transportation costs has remained relatively flat over time, with the exception of 2019, where it jumped up. But again, that formula did keep up with it. It did close that gap. Until 2021, we were almost at 90%. We were almost at 90% of closing that gap. But unfortunately, that trend's starting to go the other direction. So I think it's something we have to keep an eye on, and it's starting to compound itself when it comes to the school budget and the assessment increases, where if we start heading in the other direction of the state contributing less to regional transportation, it's gonna shoot this assessment number beyond what chapter 90, or beyond what that chapter 70 is.
70 would be, yep.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so DPW. Relatively flat. The reason why there was such a large increase is because last year we had a 0% increase because we were still negotiating a contract. In that new contract included the adoption of a level adjustment scale. So this is, that 10% is basically a whole year back plus the next year and the increases.
Yeah, that's why it's so high.
Yeah.
But it's not really that high. It's only high because you don't see an increase. If you look at FY '23 to FY '24,
Yep.
you'll see there wasn't very much of an increase in there. The minimal increase that was there was for the 3 non-union people that are in the DPW. And then, otherwise, the wages for like the union members was flat because they negotiated their contract after July 1st.
Yep.
So that was, we had moved it to cover, so
This
they're
was
fine,
the only, this was the only department where you didn't break out the directors or whatever, the superintendents.
Well, the police,
Why?
fire, and DPW all get their wages rolled up into one line. That's how they've always been.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We could
We
correct
can
that.
break
It's
them out,
just,
but
Yeah,
that's how
it
they've
just-
always been.
As I was going through, you would see the fire chief or the police chief. I
Well,
thought.
fire chief says he breaks his lines out because he likes to see it like that, but police, you're right, police doesn't.
But even in
Yeah.
library, okay, you see the
Yeah,
library.
everybody
direct-
else
And then
does,
see
yeah.
everybody else, and this was the only department I noticed where you didn't see.
Yeah.
The head broken out.
Yeah, we can break them out for you guys. We roll it up for town meeting anyway to save on the paper, so we can break it out for you guys if you want to see it next time.
and then these are just the differences between what was requested and what's being proposed.
Yeah.
Really just a less of an increase to field maintenance.
So that field maintenance was because we had that contract negotiation. We are, the mowing contract that we have for like all of our buildings was up this year, but we had a 1-year option to extend. And I had agreed with the company to extend out for 1 more year, so his increase is flat, but we had thrown a increase there, cause at the time when we did budgets, we didn't know that he was going to extend for the 1 year, so that is reflective of the 1-year increase.
So from this
That's why
point
it's
forward,
lower.
don't worry, I'm gonna get you home on time. So from this point forward, though, we're gonna see cemetery expenses in this grouping, right, of DPW.
So
right?
cemetery has always been roped up into DPW, that's where they fall under the,
Okay, but
in the
even
section.
even with this new facilities.
Yes, there
I mean,
was
Yeah,
so
they're
remain-
still
going to
separate.
be-
They'll still remain within DPW.
Okay,
yeah, they're their own separate like department, but they're in the public works section.
yeah,
So so highway and cemetery all fall into that one public works section on the budget.
mm-hmm, yep,
Yeah, and then we just broke out to those variances with the superintendent,
Yep.
the
Yeah.
field maintenance, labor. Taking it away. Human Services, Culture and Recreation, so Board of Health, Council on Aging, Veterans Expenses, and then Library Recreation, and Historical Commission.
yep.
They're pretty benign, over the
Yep.
prior year, so I don't know if you guys have any questions on that.
Not I don't, nope.
And that, just came this one
Oh,
more slide.
James got a hand raised.
Yeah, I just have a question for future. So I know this is under the current staffing. If say someone ever were to retire in that department, that number probably will shift significantly, right?
Yes.
Is that something that you plan and budget for, knowing that might come?
So for Board of Health specifically? Or?
Correct, I'm sorry, yes, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
I knew that you knew what I meant.
Yeah.
Say it.
So-
Sorry.
Just in case Jeremy doesn't know, right now our Board of Health, director agent, he is a retiree, so he only works part-time.
Okay.
So he can only we max him out at what he can make. cause he
Okay.
retired from another, municipality, pension plan, so he can only make a certain wage. So when if you do hire a full-time employee, that wage is going to jump significantly. Cause that was also
Yeah.
one of the ones on our salary survey that was pointed out as underpaid,
Yeah.
but only because the employee that is there right now is a retiree, so he doesn't work full-time.
Right,
Yep.
so I think that if that were to come to pass, we'd be back before this. And it wasn't able to be planned for in the budget cycle, then I think we're back before finance committee to
Right.
discuss how we address that.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't foresee it to be this year or anything, but I know that that will be a very different, I believe that will be a very, very different number,
Oh, yeah,
when you guys face that.
yeah.
Agreed, not something I like to think about, but
We told him
something
he's
we
not-
have to think about.
He's not allowed to retire, we
Yeah.
told him.
I
He's stuck
tell him
here.
that all the time, I know, I tell him that all the time, but
He's
I still
great.
know that for planning reasons, you're gonna need to
Yeah.
budget for that.
So we're hoping that he would, I'm assuming he would give us ample notice if he were to retire, we'd probably get a decent heads up that he's retiring so we could plan for it.
So debt service, you can see principal amounts don't change. We're not taking any new debt this year. This is the last year of the highway facility, so you can see we only have to pay half year of the interest cost, so that'll, FY '26, you won't see the highway garage again. You also won't see, the tanker truck, Maynard Field, or Engine One. So all of those are falling off in after FY '25.
Yep.
So we projected this out, accounting for the fire station project, to show kind of a visual of what that looks like for a debt. So we're almost down to nothing in debt, at like almost absolutely nothing. We understand that by bringing on the fire station project, we're gonna be going back up about 1.5. It looks dramatic on paper,
Yes.
but as compared to the debt that a municipality of our size would typically carry, it's less than average.
Yeah, and we'll probably try to plan something in that FY '26 budget where if we are able to not lose that debt capacity, because it looks bad when you go out to bond that you lost all your capacity, you let it drop and then it spikes back up and it really will fluctuate that tax bill a lot. So if we're able to somehow plan for that, if it's passed, we'll try to do something to plan so it doesn't fall all the way off, so we don't lose all of that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't spike everyone's tax bill drastically.
So Jeremy and Terry, what they're proposing at the town meeting is a debt of 13.2?
So it is a debt exclusion at the town ballot of 13.1.
13.1.
On the town meeting, we'll be asking for a loan authorization for approximately 17 million, but we know, say you were in the meeting beforehand, we have the preliminary cost estimates. It appears that that number may escalate to as much as $1 million, more than what was originally projected. Anything above 13.1 million will be eaten within the levy limit.
Right.
And we will budget for that within our operations. It will not impact an increase in taxes above the levy limit.
Starting in '26.
Yeah.
Approximately 26, 27. 26, we may have to carry some,
Short-term
some
borrowings.
short-term borrowing costs, but the full project would not hit the, tax levy until that 27.
Yeah, so you won't see the exclusion hop on until the project is completed. You can't go for that debt exclusion piece until your project's done.
And as far as the warrant is concerned, is that that piece in the warrant as well, or is it just the 13.1 debt exclusion? I don't know if I
So
understood.
the ballot will vote the debt exclusion piece. So when you go to the ballot in the beginning of May, you'll vote just for the exclusion.
Okay,
When you go to town meeting at the end of May, you will vote for the total project cost.
okay.
So you're gonna see
I
two
gotcha.
different numbers, but
gotcha.
it's because the ballot is gonna vote a partial exclusion, cause we're only excluding part of the project, and then the town meeting always usually authorizes the dollar amount, but because we're able to go for that partial, you'll see a partial on the ballot and then the full project on the town meeting vote.
And if you remember, Andrew went through, he's getting ARPA money and he's
Yeah.
getting this money and that money, and that's where all of that was
Yeah.
coming from.
Right, so we'll offset.
You remember that, Terry? Jamie? I keep saying Terry. Okay. And
Yes.
Christian, you got that too, right? You remember that? And Keith?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so essentially, it's $1.5 million of money that we put into capital stabilization over the last 3 years that we'd use to reduce that burden of the total loan authorization.
And then we have a couple other available
Okay.
fund monies that we'll take in, one of them is bond proceeds that we got from doing that public safety borrowing for that like 1.4 million that we did, so we have some bond proceeds left over from that we need to spend towards a lake project, so we'll use it for this as well, it's almost $100,000.
Can I ask a question through the chair?
Yes.
Will this be presented in a handout form at town meeting so people will understand where the various components of funding would come from for the
It will
project?
be in the motion for the monies that we need to move, but I'm assuming in your presentations that you're gonna do prior to town meeting, it will be in there as well.
We just have to figure out how we message it within
Right.
the warrant booklet
Right,
of the effect of the vote.
So that it's
Yeah.
clear to people
Yeah.
exactly
Right.
what they're voting on?
Yeah.
Right.
yeah,
My
think
hope
we'll-
would be, Noreen, that he's gonna be holding enough hearings or public displays ahead of time that the majority of the people should know how it's going to work, and it'll just take minimum at the meeting.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe a percentage table or something like that we can just include, maybe before or after where we show the stabilization balances.
yeah,
um,
do it in there.
Do it in
Yeah.
that portion. Of course, we're gonna buy Jim, so.
Yeah, make sure he's okay with it.
Yeah.
He won't like it, cause he hates our table anyway.
All right, retirement and insurance. So this is another one that we have seen jumble, kind of large increases over time, specifically with the Worcester Regional Retirement Plan. This is essentially provided to us by their actuary based off of their funding plan, and I think they're at 56% of where they need to, where they
Yeah,
should be.
they're low, I don't even know the,
Right.
but they're low.
Right, so there are increases over the last 10 years, I don't know how many, have been based off of the early retirement incentive that was issued back in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
So, what did you say, 2 years until we should start seeing that number start to level off? There was a time frame.
Something like that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but as you see, it's gone up drastically over the last, 7
Yeah,
years.
cause they have to be fully funded like we are by some
Right.
point, so they're trying to get to that,
Right.
like, just like we are.
General insurance, that's increasing, it's been kind of increasing across the board. We're budgeting for 9% right now, not knowing the total number, but we know that we've had to, supplement those funds over time, so we wanna try to catch back up.
It's a good thing we're not down in Florida, because we're facing increases of 100 to 150%.
Yep,
Wow.
yep, so it's been nationwide.
Yeah, yeah, my homeowner's insurance went up 50% last year.
Group health insurance, we've been lucky enough with our plan that over the last 3 years, it's been 0%, and actually the year before that, it dropped. But we're paying the piper this year. That factored in with
We had an
factoring additional benefit.
Yes, we had an 8% increase to our health insurance benefits this year, plus I factored in obviously the 2 new positions for fire. I think we have a couple open positions at the moment that haven't taken insurance, so I put like a placeholder in just in case they were to come back and say, hey, I need insurance. We have just a little bit of a little tiny cushion in there, so.
Yeah, and then group life, Medicare, unemployment, those have basically just been level funded year after year. It's some minor adjustments. And OPEB, last year at town meeting, we funded 100,000, but then voted a supplemental appropriation of another 150 to get us to 250. We're budgeting for the 250 going into annual town meeting. So you can see where FY23 was the 1 year that we actually made a double payment into that to try to catch up more, and we've seen actually good dividends on the OPEB over the last few years. That's reduced our
Yep.
Yeah.
projection down. What's our liability? Was like $6 million?
Yeah,
Yeah, so we're down to a $6 million liability on that.
so this is, we actually only contribute like $100,000 this year, but we've kind of talked about it, where I think we're just gonna keep that 250 as a
The 250,
placeholder.
that was always Donna's thing too.
Yeah, try to get us
Remember that.
ahead of the game, so.
Water and sewer, just kind of broke them up between water expenses and the sewer expenses, exactly what was proposed. water, 1% increase in revenue, that's all coming out of their retained earnings fund. Essentially, Southbridge is the water operator, we're just in line. So we have minimal costs other than the maintenance of the water lines. And then the sewer enterprise, this year we're projecting a reduction in privilege fees and betterments, but there seems to be enough residual in the usage charges to be able to recover that. They have they've brought their staffing for that office from 2 down to 1 through water and sewer, and that's reduced their payroll expenses, but all other expenses have remained relatively flat. And then finally, we have the capital and free cash allocations. So 2 things that we'll be looking to address with our remaining free cash. So we still have $724,000 remaining in free cash that we did not allocate anywhere at the special town meeting. We want to fill a little bit of a gap with municipal energy. As you said, we seem to be trending higher than what was projected, so we want to make sure we cover that expense. Same thing with gas and diesel. That has also been trending higher. Snow and ice, we've usually taken free cash at the end of the year of the last 3 years and funded that versus raising it on the overlay or within the next year's budget, so we're covering that. One thing that was identified though was that when we had our free cash certified, a payment that was made that was intended to cover the peer review costs of Amazon, essentially their performance-based design with the building office, was incorrectly applied as a general receipt versus a special revenue. So that was factored into our free cash assessment.
Yeah.
They've had to continue to do that, but we need the legislative approval to essentially pull it back out of that free cash and back into the appropriate.
Yeah, so our option was, 1, go back and have free cash recertified, which would revoke all of our votes from October town meeting, because now I don't have free cash certified, or let town meeting move it since I have the excess there.
Yeah.
So that was the easiest way, DOR said to do it, so.
Yep.
And the last one was a $10,000 repair to the railroad pond.
Yeah, so that's actually a new request I was gonna bring up to you guys tonight, so, DCR came back to conservation maybe about a month ago and had deemed Railroad Pond to be a high hazard dam pond area, and it was in need of immediate repair, or else it would have faced thousands of dollars of fines from DCR for not fixing it. So conservation is working with DPW and an engineer to get that work done. Since DPW is now helping her, it had brought that cost down significantly. So she's requesting about $10,000 to take care of that project. Actually, wait, no, that's gonna be a little bit more than 10,000. I'm sorry. It's gonna end up being like 15 or 16,000, I think, total between what the engineer needs, which is like 13,000 of it, and then 2,000 to help cut some trees and do some vegetative and some concrete work down there to fix the stuff from
This
DPW.
fiscal year or the 25?
Yeah, she's asking for it for the spring at May, because if they wait till the fall, we could face we could face fines from DCR between now and October if we had to wait. As a caveat, they do have some extra money in some of their articles from like South Charlton fencing. There was a little bit extra there, and then the dam they just repaired, I believe it was Glen Echo. She has some extra in there, and she said if that I could close those out, so it will kind of wash free cash. I'll get extra in free cash for my 24 certification, and then she can use the excess here.
In capital stabilization, essentially, we're breaking the piggy bank open to pay for the intended use. Some special revenue items. Chief is looking to place a ambulance on order. Right now, it's a 3-year build period on a new ambulance. So, having an article fund for $425,000 from his receipts reserve for appropriation to pay for that ambulance when it does ship.
So Jeremy did ask me a question the other day, which is a very good question. I originally had put it into budget and just assumed that he could just buy the ambulance, not thinking that, oh wait, this is gonna take us 3 years and that money's gonna close out at the end of the fiscal year, so I had a light bulb go off and I was doing budget, I was like, oh, that needs to be a capital article, let me move that, so it's not in budget, you'll see it on the town meeting warrant now. So still same thing, that money is gonna sit there
Yeah.
until he spends it rather than it closing out at the end of FY '25.
And I don't know if you wanna talk about the.
Yes, so the Municipal Waterways Fund, the Lakes and Ponds Committee, I believe, is gonna be submitting me a request to have some work done down there. It's gonna be to improve the access ramp over there, by putting in a couple catch basins, so DPW is also going to do that work for us as well, and save us a lot of money by doing the work themselves. They have requested to put in 2 catch basins there to prevent some of the runoff that's currently going into the pond down there, I believe it's South Charlton into the lake. So he asked for 10 grand to install 2 catch basins, we were quoted over 10 grand for 1 catch basin by an outside contractor working with an engineer. So he is actually cutting that cost well in half for us, so.
Okay.
That will come from another receipts reserve for appropriation cost that's, is 50% of boat excise that we collect every year goes into that fund for certain uses, and that is one of the uses they're allowed to use it for.
Yep.
And then finally, the Water Sewer Commission is requesting $83,000 come from Water Stabilization Fund to purchase a piece of property on Old Bay Path Road for the intended use of establishing a water supply.
I thought we bought a piece of property
We
down
did,
on Buffalo.
Gale Road.
Yeah.
It didn't put out as much water volume as I think they were expecting when they went back and did some perks. This piece of property has been very promising from the tests that they've been doing,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, we're sitting on about $16.3 million in total reserve balances between all of the retained earnings and stabilization and
Yep.
free cash balances. After the requested appropriations, we'd be about $13.5 million in reserve balance. But I guess the good news here is back in 2017, 2018, look at how low, we were with our certified free cash was almost nothing.
Yeah.
Our enterprise retained earnings were relatively low, and our stabilization account was was probably $700,000. Today, we're well over $3 million we've gotten over $3 million in certified free cash. Our stabilization balance
Yep.
is almost $3.5 million, and our retained earnings is almost at 3, so.
You had a couple
For sure.
questions in there too, I don't know if you wanna look at them, I think this was your last slide, right?
I think that was the last. Yep, thank you.
Okay.
Alright, I'll stop sharing now.
One point I'm gonna make, and a bunch of us can work on it, but it was suggested to me that at the back of the budget, at the end of the budget, a little definition table. Because we seem to get the same questions every year. What does OPED stand for?
I
What
think we
does-
did that
We have
one
for
year,
the last
right?
We have for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah,
It's just whether
I
or
think
not
it's in the
somebody
front
turns
of
to
the booklet.
Yeah, it's whether or not somebody turns to the page and reads it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that would be helpful, right? If you could
We
send
haven't
me
gotten
if
that
you could
question
send
in
me
the
that
last 2
draft,
meetings.
Yeah.
So.
because, I don't know, is state minimum requirements on there? I don't remember what's on there. Maybe I was one of the ones that didn't turn the page.
Okay,
But,
yeah, I'll take a look at it, maybe update some of them,
Yeah, just trying to keep the questions down at the
Yeah.
town meeting, that's all.
that works for me, less I have to talk, the better.
Okay.
I guess, do you guys have any questions on budget?
No,
Recommendations for
Yeah.
changes.
no, I was just, my big thing is I wanted to make sure that part-time clerk was in the building, that was important to
Mhm.
me, anyway. And I did have questions on some of those higher raises, but you kinda answered all of
Mhm.
those today.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything again that was out of the ordinary.
Do you guys agree with the way we're moving with facilities and everything, and the addition of the 2 firefighters, everyone's on
Yeah.
board with all that too, okay?
Now, these additional 2 firefighters, if the new building passes, we're still gonna be looking for
4.
four
Four.
more.
Right,
Yeah.
and really that's to optimize the
The
use of
utilization
the
of the
facility.
building.
Yeah.
It's not to say that, well, it's gonna sit dark and stagnant if you don't give us four additional, but to optimize the use for additional, and if it passes and we continue on the trend that we're in, then we'll continue to try to build to that mark, but
Right.
frankly, if we get 2 more bodies in there, we're not gonna be able to house any more people in there, so we kinda have to just kinda plan for it once the completion's done.
Right. So he might have to shuffle around and have, instead of having 6 down at this building, maybe do 4 and 2 until we can hire to get enough staffing to staff both buildings.
Yep.
Cause he has no more space to put more bodies down at his building currently, so probably you could even pre-plan and train them down at the old building to move them to the new building, cause he has nowhere to put any more bunks down there, unless you add on to that building first.
No, that's not happening.
Yeah,
That's not happening.
so,
Alright, so we don't need a formal motion,
Not tonight.
To-
no,
We just need to know where you guys stood on all these things,
Right.
and then
yeah,
and.
Really the same thing
If
on
I do a
Tuesday?
quick poll,
Yeah.
Jeremy, you got,
I think Andrew and Ashley have done an amazing job.
thank you.
I mean, yeah, I don't have, you answered every single question. I did have a list of questions, honestly, ready for this meeting, you know, cause I
Yep.
emailed some to you and you answered every single one, and
Perfect.
I actually feel really good about
Good.
what's in there.
what we're proposing. Keith, you got anything?
No, Andrew and Ashley do a great job at streamlining everything for us and making it easy, so it helps.
Thank you.
Christian? You good?
Yeah, I commented in the chat that I really like the way that this was presented, and before I was a panelist, I agree with you, Hank, that I felt last year we had a lot of additional asks that we had to turn down, and this year has just been really streamlined and really just really level set by the departments.
Good.
We've been
Ja-
trying to get really creative on ways to do it without totally adding
Jamie still
a
on?
lot of head
I didn't
counts.
see your name.
Yeah.
She said she signed off, she had to go to that work meeting.
Yeah, oh, that's
She
right.
has a work
Yeah,
meeting.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, she did.
So we've been
Okay.
getting really creative of ways to try to answer everybody's asks while also being leery of not adding too many new bodies as
Right.
well, because that's how the way the board wants to go. So we've been trying to,
So our
creative.
goal then is to meet with the Board of Selectmen next Tuesday night,
yes.
get their take on it. But this is what we're gonna say to Andrew and Ashley to present to the
Yep.
Board of Selectmen, saying, we're good with this.
Yeah, so I'll push this forward as finance committee recommended to them
Right.
for next week.
Right. And see what they got to say.
Mhm.
Interesting, all right? If that's it, I'll
Did you
entertain-
guys wanna go over debt at all or no?
Not
do you
today.
care?
It's-
Okay.
Yeah, I think you,
No.
you
That's
kinda
fine.
hit on it,
Yeah.
honestly, in that slide, it
Okay.
covered the
I didn't
majority.
wanna see Andrew try and get home before 9 o'clock.
At least before the road's
So
nice.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Yeah, I got a motion. Keith, you second?
Okay.
Keith seconds. All in favor, say aye.
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 I
Yeah, I threw you, because I always say, all in favor, say yes. I threw you tonight. Okay, it is passed. We're done.
Thanks, guys.